Okay, so here's the deal. As far as intros go, I want to introduce you, but also I need you to know this is a milestone and that this is the 20th episode.
Nice.
And so the reason that's significant is because I heard the statistic listening to a different podcast where most podcasts don't get past episode 3, even less get to episode 10. And if you get to 20 episodes, you're technically in the 1% of people who have ever podcasted, despite viewership. So welcome to Milestone. Folks, today we have my father-in-law, Chris Erskine. And when I was trying to figure out how to introduce you, I ran into a bit of a roadblock because you've worn many hats in your life so far. And so if you were to introduce yourself as you are now, how would you describe yourself?
Wow. I would say I'm an artist right now.
Okay.
I've entered the artistic phase of my life for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
When did that start?
Basically, this phase started when I retired.
Sure.
But I've always dabbled in artistic things. Definitely starting with guitar.
Okay.
So music was first. Then a while, maybe 8 years ago, I started painting and drawing. I've always wanted to try to learn that. So it was a good 3 years of just immersing myself in trying to learn that, and didn't go very far in a sense. Not that to say I wouldn't go back to it, but and then now recently, it's definitely writing, specifically poetry. Lyrics, you could say, are kind of like,
yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Poems in a way. So I've been writing songs for quite a while. So that transition into poetry was maybe, I'll say, easier than maybe other people just getting into it.
There's some overlapping skills. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, right now, primarily artistically is music and poetry for me.
Okay. And how old were you when you said you started playing guitar?
Seriously playing guitar was college years. So it was like 19, 20. That's when it really grabbed me and hasn't let go.
Okay. And so you've played rather consistently since?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, never, unless special circumstances, I pretty much play at some point every day, whether it's for 5 minutes or an hour or two. I mean, there's going to be a few days where I'm on vacation or I'm doing something else,
sure.
Whatever. But
generally speaking,
it's pretty much an everyday thing is playing music. So,
what is it? Like a calling, would you say, in the sense that, like, when you wake up, are you excited to play music, or is it sometimes a chore? Like, you feel like you got to get some practice in to make sure you stay sharp, or how does that work?
It's, I don't know if it's the same as you feel when you haven't worked out in a while. I don't know.
Sure,
like, it's something you feel like you have to do. I don't know, but no, it's more. It's just a feeling. Like and especially if I have gone a few days without it, and then especially if it's because I'm in a situation where I can't bring my guitar, or like I could just feel it building.
You're like a little bottled up?
Yeah, it's bottled up. And then as soon as I pick it up again, it's just this huge release of just...
Okay.
And it's... some days it's just something to do. And other days, there's times where I go through phases of, I'm going to learn more about, playing the blues, or I'm going to learn
sure.
these songs. Like there's an artist, let's say, that I've always wanted to learn some of their songs. And so I'll just concentrate on learning a handful of that person's songs, or these. I have to keep a list of songs that I want to learn, right? And then just kind of checking them off. So there's phases where I'm learning, and then other times where I'm just playing, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no, and then there's my songs, right?
Right.
So and those are the same thing. I won't play my own songs for a week or something, and then there's some songs I haven't played in months, and then I'll revisit them, and it's the same. I'm starting to learn now with the poetry is I'll write it, and I'm a big on editing my own stuff or revising, right?
Like as you go.
Yeah, it's more like, and I've learned that that's how I work creatively. I'm not a first time it comes out it's done. Yeah,
you don't touch
it. It's for sure just getting it all out, and then when with the music part is and what I do now is I just record it on my phone, and that's just this rough draft, and then I'll let it sit for a couple of days, and then I'll listen to it, and that's worth exploring some more.
Okay,
and then I start to really work on it. And then same with the poetry, it just comes out as an idea, and I get it on paper, and I write it. I don't type it first. I write it all out, and then I'll look at it later in the day, the next day, 2 days from now, and then. I'm not going to go any farther with it. Or, that's really good. I think this is worth working on more. And then I just keep refining it. And sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times of sitting with it. Sometimes, there's still stuff. I think I'll probably revise things till I die.
Sure.
It's just, you always look at it, you always look at it, and you're like, it can be, there's one word that just changes everything.
Just the hair out of place.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm being a perfectionist. It's more of, you just keep looking at it with fresh eyes, or listening to it with fresh ears, that, why did I do that? Or you just hear a little bit something different that, okay, I don't know. Yeah.
So if you were to put something out, let's say an EP or an album or something, would that be challenging in that once it's released, you have to let go of it? It's done.
I thought about that.
Sure.
And not from sort of in a way of for sure imagining myself doing that, and I don't know if I'll ever do that someday. I don't know. That's something I wrestle with actually quite a bit, and have for quite a while, because I've had these songs, some of these songs I've had for almost 20 years now.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
But I try to imagine myself as an artist who's been putting stuff out, and how do they feel when they listen to their stuff that is 10, 15, 20 years old? And are they still happy with it? I wonder that. An artist who's been around a long time, and that's where I know Bob Dylan does this. And I think it's because he wants to keep it fresh for himself, not necessarily that he wasn't happy with the original. I think he's just trying to keep it fresh, but he'll change the musical arrangements of songs. He'll change the lyrics.
Oh.
Like if you listen to Knocking on Heaven's Door, like the original recorded version.
Yeah.
And then you listen to multiple different live versions, the lyrics change all the time.
Interesting, huh? Yeah, I didn't know that about him. He's constantly
doing that. And then that's, I've heard people who've played with him, whether it's Tom Petty and his band, or his backing band, I think, on a tour, and they had to constantly be just they didn't know what version of what song was going to be, what key it was going to be in, whatever, until
geez.
he started playing.
Oh, and so they just have to pick up on his lead?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I could not, that's some pressure live.
It would change night to night sometimes. So, yeah.
Got to be talented if you're touring with Bob Dylan, I guess.
So there's people that are doing that. But I always thought about that. Like, what if you put something out there and then maybe you just chalk it up to your younger self?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's almost like a time capsule.
You have to let it go. You just have to let it go, and okay, that's who I was at the time.
Sure. So personally, I wouldn't call myself incredibly musically inclined. I don't really think I can hold a tune. I played a little bit of guitar as like a 10-year-old, and then again in high school, I took a semester of learning to play guitar and did okay, could play some songs. But if you don't use it, you lose it for sure. I don't even know if I could properly find a G chord. But the point of me saying that is when I got to college, I did write lyrics because I was really big into hip hop, and the wordplay is a lot of fun for me. And you can be funny in punk rock and rock and roll, but I feel like you can really be funny in hip hop and deliver almost punchlines. Mm-hmm. Anyways, when I look back at those things, and I sometimes look back at the first thing I wrote, just on loose leaf paper, it's very much a time capsule, and I go into it apprehensive, and then I'll read it. Okay, that's actually okay for just writing something down. And it was like at the time, I've tried to do it since then, but it's just not. It's not there, and it's like a chore. I'll maybe get like a line or two, and I'm like, oh, there's something there, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? But at the time, I feel like that's when I really started to change and think. My freshman year, I didn't feel that different from high school. My sophomore year, I started to feel different, and I felt like I needed to get it out and almost articulate it to myself. Mm-hmm. And I was really ramping up my interest in hip hop, and that was a good way to get it out. But it's different because I haven't continued with it, whereas it is something that you have continued. So I could kind of see it being maybe a bit of a time capsule, but also kind of being like, oh, we can redo this a little bit. So when it came to writing poetry, was that sort of the same feeling in terms of it was you were drawn to it and you're like, okay, I need to kind of switch gears, and there's some similarities, but when you switched over to poetry, was it the same feeling as writing song lyrics or playing guitar or that sort of thing, or is it different?
I would say initially it was because my initial poetry was in a rhyming scheme, like a song.
Okay, gotcha.
It was basically, I think my first true, like real attempts at it were taking some bits of songs that I had been working on that just weren't working as song lyrics, but then taking them and running with them as a poem, but keeping the rhyme scheme. And so they were kind of sing-songy and whatever. And and even in the poetry group that I am still a part of, those first few poems that I submitted, they were just this real, they're rhyming. And that's, I just went all in. I became a member of a poetry group and just started getting books from the library, just poetry books. And I suddenly realized, just very quickly realized, oh, poems don't have to rhyme. And actually, most poetry nowadays does not rhyme.
Right. And
it's more, I look at them as they're just very succinct little stories that a lot of, and my favorite ones, there is an arc. There is an arc, and then there's usually a nice, sometimes there's a vague ending, but even but usually there is a nice ending that whatever the poet is trying to get across is usually kind of sort of punching you in that very last, phrase or sentence or two, whatever. And that's what I love about poetry. That's what
Okay.
I've fallen in love with
Mm.
and especially the poets that look at everyday life
Mm-hmm.
and just the sublime, the things that seem to go unnoticed, and they're noticing them,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a good photographer.
Sure.
And which I delved pretty deep into.
Yeah,
at
we'll
one
get
point
there.
in my life, but and when I discovered that's what, and those were the poets and poems that spoke to me the most, were like really good photographs that were doing a really good job of capturing a moment and then somehow relating it to your personal life and getting some sort of message across that was either inspiring or insightful, whatever it was. Then it was just, oof, I was off. And that's just, and I love it. I love now all the things, little things I was noticing with a photographer's eye. Now I'm looking at them from a written perspective, trying to get it on paper maybe now, or I don't know. There's just now the way I'm also trying to find my voice, right?
Yeah, that's challenging.
Finding my voice. So now it's all right. How do I take these moments that I'm noticing in life that maybe other people aren't, and then now I gotta give them a little, me,
sure,
in there, and then relate. I'm trying to share myself through these poems.
Yeah, there's a perspective there.
I would say, I think you asked how lyrics have gone into poetry. But
yes,
I think it's come full circle, and now our poetry is starting to. Now I'm looking at my lyrics in a different way.
Sure.
Now I'm looking at them. I don't know. It's kind of coming back around, and but it's fun. It's so much fun, and now being retired, it's and being somewhat disciplined. It's part of almost my morning routine now. Is spending time, and it's such a nice part of the day where guitar playing has always been an evening thing for me.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why.
Sure, that's just when it happens.
But poetry writing is a morning thing.
That's so funny.
A lot of ideas really come to me when I'm laying in bed right before I get up. And I don't know how many times the phone's right there and I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. So I just talk into my phone. So I'll have all these
kind of notes, ideas
on my phone, and I'll just every once in a while, I'll just sit there with pen and paper and write them as I listen to them. And then,
So not to be ignorant, but I'm not sure if someone asked me a definition of poetry, I could define it because, and in high school, we did multiple poetry units and it got to a point where I didn't know what we were doing because it did stop rhyming. And at the time, maybe it was just too abstract, or I don't know if we focused enough on particular artists to understand their perspective to then be like, okay, this is how they viewed it, or, this other artist viewed it. But once it stopped rhyming, I didn't get it. And then I never touched it. It was never something I did. I am aware that not all poetry rhymes. So how would you even go about defining it?
You're talking to an uneducated poet. So can we do a phone a friend and call Michaela?
I wonder how she would define it. That's a good point.
I don't know what the book definition is, but to me it's just like I said, they're just snippets, it's little stories that are just done in a very, like you said, they can be done very abstract, which I don't. Just like we went to the art museum yesterday.
Tay was telling me, looking at some abstract paintings, like, come on.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
I hear you. Any abstract painters out there?
Sure.
But and it's same with the poetry. As soon as I have to really, really, really start thinking hard about what I'm like, why are these words even together? You just lost me as a reader, and that's fine. There's a lot of people out there that enjoy that challenge. They enjoy the challenge of, it's almost like breaking a code or something.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
It is
when you crack their perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And that's great for some people. It's just not for me. So poetry to me, like I said, it's just nice little stories that.
Do you feel like being a dad made you talked about poetry maybe capturing some of those smaller parts of life? Do you feel like being a dad helped that at all? Or did you have that lens pre-fatherhood?
No, I did not come to this until the last few years.
Gotcha.
I've always kept a journal.
Okay.
Definitely more so at certain times in my life than others. But so I've always was writing down things, but never, it was always, well, I did this and I did that, and it was never too observational. It was only really observational about myself. It wasn't observational about what was going on around me. And so now it's about picking up on the little things going on around me, being aware, being observant to what's going on, and now trying to capture it, like maybe years ago with a camera. Now with like letting it come through and then out and then down.
Sure.
And trying to find some meaning, that maybe it took to this point in my life.
Sure.
Where I'm really trying to find meaning in the life that I've lived and the life that I've left.
Sure.
Because
that's a fair search.
I'm on the downhill.
Sure.
I've lived.
Yeah, you're in the back half.
Yeah, I'm on the last third. For sure. So yeah, I just think it coincided with having the time now, the time to reflect, the time in my life to be where I'm at. Because I just don't think. I think anything I would have written when I was younger would have been crap.
So,
it would have been shit.
So on that note, and I'll let you finish because
I just
please.
didn't have it. I didn't have it. And I think I've always been a slow learner.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. Yeah. It's always taken me a while to get up to speed with things. I
think you're reasonably intelligent, though.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But no, whether things I'm trying to learn in my personal life, so whether it's sports, that sort of thing, or guitar, things where I'm learning on my own versus in my professional life as well. It took me years to where when I was, paramedic, firefighter, before I felt comfortable in that job. It took the job I did in the Air Force. It took me probably 3 years before I felt comfortable in that job. It wasn't something that happened overnight or in the first year even.
Gotcha.
I just don't come to things real quickly. It just.
Do you think that's like because I'm sure, let's say if we just pick the Air Force for a second, you were doing that job for 3 years before you felt like you got comfortable. Do you feel like you got better at doing your task, let's say, at 3 years versus 1.5 years? Or do you feel like you got more comfortable doing them? Like, was there a big increase in quality, do you think? Or was it just, okay, now I'm actually settled in?
Quality and confidence came almost
at the same time. Okay. So it's like, aha.
I would say the same thing with the fire service.
Okay.
Quality and confidence came about the same time.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I think once I became confident in myself and in what I was doing, then the quality came. And until then, when I was insecure, uncomfortable, and quite frankly, just inexperienced.
Sure.
So you mix all those together, and I was, and some people can overcome that, right? Maybe they carry themselves already with a certain level of confidence or they don't let those insecurities get in the way of them learning or whatever it is. Like
sure.
There's some people out there that maybe they're naturals, maybe I don't know, but
sure.
I've always, and I don't know, maybe it's also the things that I've done in my life professionally have been pretty far outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, and that's probably good.
In a way,
yeah.
But also
stressful.
It took me a little longer than other people because I was a bit outside my comfort zone.
Gotcha. So I'm curious because you were a kicker for the football team in college, right?
No.
Weren't you?
No.
Why am I thinking of that?
I was a kicker, but it was for high school.
Why did I think you did it? You went to Kent?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? For some reason, I thought you kicked at Kent.
I just played soccer.
Oh, okay.
Kent State at the time did not have a men's soccer team.
Oh, interesting.
They only had a club team. So, yeah. What
did you do right out of college? Because I have no idea.
I went right into the service.
Oh, you did. So there was no college, break in between.
A little bit because so in college I was an Air Force ROTC, which between your sophomore and junior years when you go off to basic training.
Okay.
And then when you come back from that, if you make it through, before that fall semester, they sit you down and like, okay, this is it. You're signing on the dotted line. And from your last 2 years of college, you're going to get a monthly stipend, but you are officially in the Air Force. And if you back out on this, if you don't graduate and go off and go to active duty, you will then, instead of going off as an officer, you will then go in as an enlisted. So either way, they got you.
Gotcha. Okay. There's no going back.
Yeah. So really, even though I didn't go on active duty until after I graduated.
Sure.
And there was a bit of time there where actually between graduation and actually showing up for my first day. But those last 2 years, you're technically in the Air Force.
So I've always been curious, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. What drove you to want to be in the Air Force or in the military in general? Because I don't know.
Well, I wanted to fly.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, so, and unfortunately with my vision, at the time you had to have 20/20 uncorrected vision
Gotcha.
to be a pilot. So the backup was to be a navigator. That's fine. Still get to fly. So I had a navigator slot. I was going to be a navigator. And 2 months before I graduated, they had a 50% cutback on pilots and navigators in the Air Force.
Oh.
And I was part of that 50%.
Dang, you got laid off before you got the job.
So fortunately, actually, my major in college was radio and TV production. So my ROTC commander at the time searched the Air Force jobs, and he's like, you know what? There's actually radio or TV production type thing in the Air Force, and it's at these handful of bases. And so, right before before you graduate, if you're not going to become a pilot or navigator, because you all go to the same school, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do something else, you get 7 blanks on a piece of paper, and you rank. This is the number 1 job I want to do.
Sure.
Number 2, number 3, number 4, and then there's 7 spaces of where you want to go. And I got my number 1 job and my number 2 place where I wanted to go. Both of them were in California.
Okay,
It was
gotcha.
either March Air Force Base, which is outside of LA, or where I was at Vandenberg. So I basically, in my mind, I won the lottery.
Sure, as far as that goes, yeah.
Yeah, I got the number 1 pick. Like I just,
Nice.
Because I very well could have been maintenance officer or something. And
sure.
The guys doing maintenance on aircraft somewhere. They can do whatever they want with you. And I got to do what I majored in college. And
that is pretty lucky.
And then where I was, excuse me.
No, you're good. You're good.
Vandenberg was probably the best place that I could have gone, for sure.
Just because
of the variety of projects that we did from a not only TV production, but documentary style, and filmmaking, all that. Like it was just this, from live TV to making documentaries, making like small films. Like it just, I got to, and then
to a little bit of everything
travel
there.
all over.
See, that's cool.
And see different parts of the Air Force, even other branches of the service. I couldn't. It was looking back, knowing what I know now, and where I could have gone. I would have just been most likely just put in a small outfit, which is they were called combat camera units, where they just deployed all over the place, and you were just basically just documenting exercises or any type of activities going on all around the world. But it was we're just doing one thing.
Gotcha. Limited in scope. Yeah.
All these different things. So I just got all kinds of experience.
Yeah. So what did you think about it? I'm curious what you thought about when you first joined and how you view it now, and maybe what the transition was like, if there was any, about how you thought about your service in terms of service to country. Does that make sense? How you viewed that? Did you ever feel a part of that, or was that ever something that swelled up in you? If national pride or any sort of something like that.
So it kind of maybe goes back to why did I go in? I wanted to fly.
Right.
But get emotional. So I was at basic training. They played. I think it was actually in the church. But they played a film, and it was these veterans talking about their service, and it was something to do with Vietnam.
Okay.
And I was just like, I know this has nothing to do with wanting to fly anymore.
Oh, okay.
This is about serving my country.
Really? Yeah.
Here, I was hearing firsthand about all these people that had lost friends and in battle, and just their sacrifice. Like, I just was overwhelmed with the sacrifice that all of these young men had given, whether in all the wars, not just Vietnam, just all the wars. And it just hit me. Like, I need to give back. I need, this is not necessarily, it's for my country, but I need to.
There's a debt owed sort of thing. Yeah.
To these guys who sacrificed so I could be here doing what I'm doing and just living like in America, right?
Right,
so,
of course.
So there's this huge, and I wouldn't call it patriotism. I would just call it like I just felt like I owed the guys that had died, and women,
Sure, of course. Yeah, general blanket statement. Humans.
And so from that moment on, I was just, I didn't even at that point, I still had my navigator slot.
Mm-hmm.
I had it for almost 2 more years.
Okay.
I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to serve. And now cut 7 years into the future right before I got out, and I'd had enough of the military. I felt like I did my time. I was only required to do 4 years. I did 5. Mm-hmm. And we'd started a family.
Right.
And
because Michaela was born in California?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was about 1.5 years when I got out.
And how old were you when you got out?
27.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 28.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Michaela's 1.5 years, that probably makes sense.
No, I'm going to say 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it took me almost 3 years to do all the fire service training stuff, and I didn't get hired there until I was 31.
Okay, I follow. So. Interesting. So that sort of, you felt like you'd sort of paid your dues in that sort of sense.
Yeah, and I went in as an officer, so I was instantly already, without having any experience, already in charge of people, which was nuts.
Yeah,
right?
I can see.
If you can imagine, you show up a boss in your workplace, a middle manager, or low to middle manager, and they have absolutely no experience whatsoever.
Sure.
In being a manager.
Mm-hmm.
So being in charge of people, let alone in that job, right? So you didn't even work your way up.
Right.
Knowing the job so well that I finally have
earned my spot. Yeah.
I just earned it because I went to college and I marched around on Saturday mornings.
Sure. A little bit of a cheat code.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there was a huge, just getting over that. I'll never forget walking in. So we're all the enlisted people, all of our photographers and videographers at that time when I first started, they were all in this relatively small building, and there was a civilian guy. I'm not sure so much about the other services, but I know, especially with the Air Force, and I'm pretty sure with the Army, but usually a civilian counterpart. So there's continuity, right? Because we come and go, military, we always come and go. So you need some continuity. So a lot of the organizations within the military, especially especially on base, whatever, but there's usually a civilian counterpart. So if you have a guy who's in charge of the squadron, there's a civilian guy who's also kind of in charge, but of all the civilians that are there. So we had not only military still photographers and videographers and directors and all that, we had civilian as well.
I follow. So are they sort of contracted out by the military? Is that how that works?
Yeah, they're just they're government employees.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'll never forget. So you walk by this guy's office, this civilian guy, and his desk is huge and it's just mounted with all kinds of paperwork and whatever. And you're like, okay. And then you walk into the room and it's just a room full of enlisted, and they're unsupervised. And they've been that way for a long time, for years.
Okay.
Nobody's been, and they're kind of, I don't say inmates running the asylum.
Sure.
And I'm supposed to walk in there and
get him in line.
It slowly happened, and it wasn't just me; it was a team effort. But we had to change the culture of that. But that first year was tough. I had to go in there and assert some authority when I really don't have any. I have it on my shoulder.
Sure, I have a piece of paper, right? Yeah, a badge.
I have a gold bar on my shoulder that says I'm a second lieutenant and that I outrank you and that I can tell you what to do. But I have no idea what to tell you what to do because I've never done this before.
Well, so how did you go about doing that? Like, what was the strategy and how did that change? Because that's crazy.
Really nice.
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah. It was really nice. And I made the mistake initially of trying to be, I was actually guilty of being too friendly. And then I had to course correct and then
put up some boundaries, sort of.
And then also did some things. I don't know. I can go into some things I don't want to do here. But
sure.
Yeah, it was going this way and that way. And then finally, like I said,
the adjustments became less aggressive,
and then
more fine tuning.
With help, with a lot of help. There was, luckily, at the time that I was brought in, there was a handful of other young lieutenants that were brought in as well, and it couldn't have worked out better in that way that we worked together. We all got along really well and became friends and as lieutenants, and we were just able to. We all agreed on which direction we need to go, and then we had some really good direction from up above too. So,
well, that's nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So, do you remember telling me this? I don't remember specifically who it was, but some of your buddies at the time, a couple of years ago, they had a podcast or something, and they were talking about some of the productions you guys did, and then they brought you up and like, oh yeah, I remember Chris. Oh yeah, I remember Chris. And they were talking about something you were shooting. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember, but I don't remember. I can't remember exactly what they said.
Okay, but do you remember the project?
Yeah. Oh no, I don't. Okay. I don't remember what they said, but I remember. So it's my buddy Rob Skidmore, who I still have. I need to reach out to him, but his podcast is called Below the Line. He worked as assistant director in Hollywood for, I can't remember how many years. So after he was done in the Air Force, instead of like me going off into the fire service, he actually tried to make it in Hollywood.
Gotcha.
So based on his experience there, he doesn't do it anymore. I'm pretty sure, but based on his experience and his contacts that he still has, he now has I'm pretty sure it's a pretty popular podcast.
Cool.
And it's kind of catered to the people behind the scenes of Hollywood productions, all the ADs and the lighting guys and all that. So they talk about all so yeah.
Nice.
So every year, I don't know if he did it this year, but around Veterans Day, he was having, hey, let's have kind of a reunion on the podcast from all the military guys, I used to work with.
Sure.
And they would talk about what it was like.
Gotcha.
And that was the interesting thing. One of the interesting things about that job is you're in a very structured, it's the military. You're wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
Yet we're trying to be artistic.
Yeah, that's what I think is so fascinating about what you did. You're in this like creative space in this ultra structured environment.
So in, I guess you would say, the real world, in that environment, you got guys with long hair. And, I don't know. Just take your stereotypical image of an artist, and we're trying to do the same thing, but in uniform.
Yeah, and regulation haircut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then fighting at times the bureaucracy.
Sure, some red tape, I can imagine.
I don't know. So every around Veterans Day he would have, and then so like you mentioned, it was not this past year, I think the year before they were doing it, and I was listening to it because there was a few people on there that I haven't even heard their voice in probably 25 years or whatever it is, and I was curious, and they brought my name up in something, and I think it was when we were doing, so like I said, we did some live TV stuff. So every year they had this competition, and we would treat it like sort of like the Academy Awards.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, and so it was a multi-camera live thing, and we had our truck, just we had broadcasters, and we took turns directing that live TV broadcast. Ready, camera one, take camera one. All right, camera two, I need a wide shot. All right, ready, camera two, take camera two. So you're directing live TV.
How fun.
And it was then beamed by satellite to the respective bases that had teams there competing, so they could watch. And then
that's rad.
That actually grew into this, like the culmination of it all was my last year. We had a really good, our squadron commander at the time was a very, very good filmmaker, and he was very, very motivated and assertive. And boy, we created all kinds of content, and like just these little videos to play during the ceremony, stuff to play during the broadcast that only like the viewers would see, and like it was professional. It looked good.
Little
it was like calling like a football game or an Academy Award.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. A little less lean than this production. Cool. So when I was growing up in high school, my dad had mentioned military service. His dad was a World War II vet. My mom's dad was a World War II vet. I had a cousin who went to the Air Force on my dad's side, Army Ranger on my mom's side. And so some folks in the family who are in the service. And I always thought it was awesome as a kid growing up. And 4th of July is really big in UA where I grew up. So had general patriotism and all that. But I didn't have any sort of real drive. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I didn't think too much about it in high school.
That's usually perfect for a military.
Right. That's what they're looking for. And I think
what you want to do with your life.
Perfect. We got you. We'll throw some structure your way. And I think I would have, enjoyed it. But there was actually a time right after when I was a park ranger, after I graduated college, where I was thinking about going to the National Guard or doing something. And when I boiled down my thought process, I came to the conclusion that I was really just wanting to do it for student loan relief. And I didn't think that was a good enough reason. And I kind of was a little disappointed in myself. And I was like, I don't want to half-ass this commitment if it's just for money. And I have pangs of regret here and there, not consistently and not for long, but where I look back and like, oh man, you probably should have done that. That might have been a good idea. I just, at the time I still had my long hair and I don't go cut my hair and we're going to have to go to training. And, I didn't really know. I mean, after college, I almost knew just as little about what I was going to do when I grew up as when I started. So I really just didn't know what I was doing. And for whatever reason, the past couple of years, I think probably because I got the ancestry. And so just going back and my great grandpa was in the Royal Air Force before there were like planes at the RAF. And so there's this kind of lineage, and, my dad didn't serve, but I almost feel like, I don't know, that I should have done it at some point. And now I'm going to be 30. So I'm like, I don't know how that would even work out. But, we've been watching Band of Brothers, and you've been to my dad's place in Millfield, and you've seen the photo where it's all the dudes in the 509th. so that has been a kind of a surreal experience watching that show, because it's exactly what my dad's dad did. For the base they start at in North Carolina is actually where he was. It's the exact same thing. They were the paratroopers into D-Day. That's what he did, June 4th. And then a month later, got wounded in France. And so I don't have any sort of place that I'm really going with that, but it's just kind of I always knew that was awesome. And that was very much an intense experience. And I've always thought of both my grandfathers as heroes in that way. And they both passed when I was 9, so I didn't establish an adult relationship with them. So I still kind of have the idolization of them that a 9-year-old would have. That's kind of how they are in my brain. And now to have watched that show and seen a visual representation with some dramatic flair, but I think they were pretty respectful in Band of Brothers. I don't know if you've seen the show.
I've seen a few of them. I did not see it
in its entirety. Yeah. But just the fact that those people did that, and they start each episode with little anecdotes from World War II vets who did do the paratrooping, and just hearing them, oh yeah, we had the people dying around us, and you just had to keep going, and we lost a lot of great guys, and some of them keep it together and some of them don't. And now being an adult and reflecting on what I knew my grandpa did as a kid, it's just absolutely mind-blowing that human beings, I mean, there's never been anything like the D-Day invasion ever. I mean, that's like a once in a species sort of event, at least so far. So that has been, I just have a lot of respect. And but he was a father, but he also wasn't a perfect guy. And I've heard some of the stories that my aunts and uncles have told me, and he got into some trouble here, and maybe gambled this, or did something, and I don't know how to reconcile that because I didn't really know him too well. But I feel that feeling that you were talking about when you watched the Vietnam folks. I started feeling on my couch like 10 weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing? I just don't know what to do about that. But yeah, so I was very curious to hear how you thought of your time in the service and kind of how you had it painted in your mind.
I definitely, it took a while, but and maybe I felt it at the time too, but I definitely categorized myself in my mind differently from anyone. Well, for sure, the people that served in a time of war.
Sure, of course.
That saw combat.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the people that were doing way more dangerous, risky jobs, even in times of no war, even peaceful times. That was, looking back, I wouldn't say I'm ashamed of what I did in the Air Force.
It was just the job at the time.
It was a job.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, I don't, in my mind, I categorize myself differently, and I don't know really how to describe that categorization of I'm less than, I'm not as worthy, however you want to put it. But there are people, even right now, in a relatively peaceful time, that are still, they're putting their lives on the line.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And let alone what we went through, after 9/11 and all those years in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, 100%.
And I know there was combat camera people deployed, risking their lives, documenting those things for sure. But where I was and what I was doing, yeah, I guess it served its purpose, and then, not to take away too. I think I told you too that, yeah, that was one half of our job, was kind of the, documenting, making these documentaries, doing these live TV projects and all that stuff. But the other part was, documenting missile and rocket launches from that base.
Mm-hmm.
So that was relative. That was pretty important.
Sure.
Going out to Wyoming or Montana, documenting the disassembly of a missile, an ICBM,
Mm-hmm.
and then
mm-hmm.
documenting the whole process of it being taken apart, shipped to Vandenberg, where we were on the California coast.
Okay.
Having it put back together,
mm-hmm.
put down into a launch silo.
Yeah.
And then they would bring the actual missileers that were in charge of that missile from Wyoming. They bring them out, and they would do a bunch of stuff for like a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of just training stuff. And then the culmination of that was they actually got to launch their missile out into the Pacific Ocean. So we documented all of that. So there's that. And then the other part was what's huge now, is commercial space launch, which is just going
Jiminy Christmas
with SpaceX and everything. Like Vandenberg is a big part of that now too.
Okay.
There's all kinds of launches now from Vandenberg, and there were at the time, but for sure launch activity has just gone through the roof since I left.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of our thing too, is and that was more when it came to the commercial side of rocket launches there. That's when the civilian side of our squadron, was their primary job, was documenting that stuff. But we would get asked to help once in a while with that. So
sure. I think I might know part of the answer to this, but was that also, because I know you're also really interested in NASA, similar to my dad, did documenting that process get you more interested in it? Were you already into it beforehand? Wanting to be a pilot, that's kind of...
I was already kind of a, space nerdy kid, whatever. When I was younger, went to Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral and stuff. And, loved that tremendously. Was just totally enamored by the rockets and still to this day.
Sure.
But yeah, that definitely took it to another level.
Sure, I can imagine.
Actually seeing this stuff firsthand, and being somewhat of a part of it, I guess. So,
yeah. To kind of, before I ask the next thing, put a nice little bow on the, what we were just talking about. I haven't talked about it in a while, but maybe a couple of years ago, I'd mentioned wanting to get my A cert skydiving. Mm-hmm. Does that ring a bell? Mm-hmm. Big part of that was because that's what my dad's dad did. He was a paratrooper. And I just thought the concept of jumping out of an airplane was just, what could be cooler? Mm-hmm. Is there anything cooler than that? To this day, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. But part of it is that. And then the other part is, and I did the one tandem skydive, but part of it to me, and at least that's how I thought of it growing up, and it's still kind of how I think about it, is what more can you do to sort of seize life by the balls, so to speak, than to just fall out of the sky. And to me, that's just like the most freeing thing ever. And then what was cool about going, the one time I went, and I was 21 years old, so it was 8 years ago at this point, was when we were going up, and I'm not trying to sound like macho or butch or anything, but I was not afraid, and I was so excited, and I wish they would have let me. I'm strapped to a dude, but they don't let you jump. Obviously, they kind of have you come out this way, and they did let me pull the cord though. And you've got the little, was like the altimeter, is that what it is? And it's green, yellow, and then red. You don't want to go when it's red, obviously. And but the guy let me do it. And so I followed it to the green, bottom of the green. And as soon as it got right to the end of the green, pull the chute. And the guy had an epic line after we pulled it. He was like, welcome to my office. And I was like, get out. Do you say that every time? That is so corny, but it's also like, I mean, such a cool line. And to this day, I still want to do it. I just can't rationalize it, obviously, with all the stuff we have going on. And like, that's not a financial priority, but I still can't shake it to this day with those two motivations. One, I think I can't think of anything more when it comes to just saying, yeah, I lived life. I was a person who fell from the sky because I wanted to, and then was totally okay after. Mm-hmm. To me, that is just like the pinnacle of living life to the fullest. And then you've got the generational motivation from my grandpa. And I still tell Tay, one of these days we're going to have some time, and I'm going to be able to do that, and that's going to be awesome. But I don't know when that is. And now I'm starting to get older. Not old, but
I know this. I would now inspired to ask you I am curious about why you think skydiving, mm-hmm. jumping out of a plane, mm-hmm. is the epitome of living life to the fullest.
I feel like that activity is when it comes to just jumping out of the plane and there's just nothing, but you've got the horizon and all directions, your brain can't even like compute. It doesn't, to me, like being that high, mm-hmm. I would be more afraid of standing on like a 40-foot roof, mm-hmm. Because I can contemplate the pain of falling 40 feet and maybe surviving and how screwed up that would be. But being so high up, to me, that fear isn't there. It's not present. And so I think it's just the absence of fear, despite being in an objectively, dangerous scenario. And I also just think it's like it's not the pinnacle, but I think it's just a testament to human achievement, to where we have flying machines that take you into the sky, but 2, we can leave those flying machines as a singular human and then just land. And so I just, the general concept to me is a testament to just how awesome being a human is. And, I'm not interested in base jumping or wingsuiting or any of that, because that gets, I think that's just getting a little too close to the line. At least that's how I view it. I think you're gambling a little bit too much, but yeah, I don't know if that's really answering your question.
Well,
but
maybe put it this way,
mm-hmm.
to Jake,
mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about the general population, I'm talking
mm-hmm.
about you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to feel risk and come out successful, alive on the other side to really feel alive? So risk in general, and that could be driving fast on the freeway, that could be taking a risk at work, that could be jumping out of an airplane. So this is, do you start to notice a common thread of risk in your life, and somehow you're feeding off that, or is it just one really risky thing?
I think I don't like gambling from a financial standpoint. Gambling doesn't interest me.
I'm talking about, okay, never mind.
So like, and I know what you mean in terms of like a daredevil sort of thing. I would have called myself a daredevil as a kid. I think I just enjoyed the thrill, mm-hmm. part of it is also towing the line and figuring out why like the rule exists. So
excuse me, but people who watch this are going to be able to play a drinking game every time
uh-huh.
Sorry.
No. What, were you gonna ask something?
No, I just wanted to throw that little joke in there.
Oh, gotcha. Well, so for example, like when you're a kid, you're not supposed to run up the slide, or if it's a tube slide, you're not supposed to climb up on top. Well, I got pleasure, I guess, let's say, from doing that. One, because you weren't supposed to, but two, realizing that I could, and that if you were able, then the rule, the reason for the rule is to keep people safe. And that's like a totally fair rule. But once I realized I was able to and not fall off, not only not fall off, but you can jump off. And, once like you realize, oh, you're athletic enough, you're able enough or whatever to have the rule not apply, well then, and this would eventually have consequences years later. But I was like, oh, rules sometimes can get in the way of, you figuring out what you're able to do. Like, and I will often sometimes say this, and I'm a pretty big Boy Scout at work. Like I'm pretty much a rule follower, and I will encourage people to follow the rules. But sometimes the rules, when you follow the rules, they get in the way of the truth of the objective. If, let's say I have to, like a scope of practice issue, and I'm not allowed to say, because I'm just a personal trainer or whatever, that you should do this, I should be referring you somewhere. But if I know for a fact, based off what you have told me, and I know the answer, maybe some other coach wouldn't, but I know the answer, well, then the rule is preventing me from helping this person. And so it is now getting in the way of the job, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was something that I realized as a kid. I think there was a huge aspect of me needing the risk, more so in college, but I didn't have anything going for me. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was going to grow up. I didn't have nearly as much discipline as I do now, like not even close. And so one of the ways I could get by was, I can go climb this thing. I can go climb these roofs. I can go do these things. And you get the thrill. I'm not drinking when I'm doing these things. And so, I can argue, I'm not poisoning myself. And, I'm out and about moving, and I'm not stealing. I'm not causing harm. The only risk is to myself. And I feel confident in my ability to mitigate that risk. Mm-hmm. Now I got lucky at least 3 times. For sure, where it's like, okay, but I was too dumb to take the lesson for what it was and realize how lucky that I've gotten. I think now, is from like a risk perspective. This is a great example. I was running the other day. I was going to run to the track closest to our house to do a track workout, and when I got there was barbed wire on the fence, and it was jutting out this way and inside. So it was keeping me out and also keeping the little gremlins in. And so I did a lap around to see if there was an open door, maybe just part of the fence that didn't have the barbed wire. And I got to a part where the barbed wire was gone, but now the fence was, 12 feet higher. Or not 12 feet higher, but 12 feet high. And of course the thought, I was like, I can definitely just hop this. But then the other thought was, it's a school morning, and if you climb this fence and someone sees you doing it, even if you just claim, I'm just here to do a track workout, one, there's barbed wire, so the most obvious indicator you're not supposed to be there. And two, you're not 18 anymore. You can't. I would have been totally okay, even up to 21 or something, saying like, I just figured I could do this, that sort of thing. And I would feel confident in my ability to kind of talk my way out of it. And the thought of even getting caught and then being in that situation as a 29-year-old with a child just filled me with so much embarrassment. I was able to play that scenario out and be like, that would be horrendous. Even if you just did get a slap on the wrist or like, hey, climb back out of here, you freak. And so I wouldn't say it's a defining part. I just think that when it comes to the skydiving thing, there's sort of like a magnificence to it. Almost like, like the sailor on the sea and all they want is the horizon, and it's very glamorous and poetic. I that's sort of how I feel about that. And I think there's also a little bit of pressure because that was something I said I was going to do, as an 8-year-old, and then again as a 21-year-old, got all the paperwork. Okay, cool. It just never made sense from a budgetary standpoint. And now, I'm 29 and obviously I have a kid. And so you have to consider having kids with risky behavior such as that, obviously. And so that's not lost on me. But now I almost feel a little bit of pressure from my younger self, in addition to, it being something that my grandfather did, and that would make me feel a little bit more connected to him. And it being something, for whatever reason, I have attached. This is, it's almost like it's almost like this thing where, if you dream it, you can do it, sort of thing. It's just like, I almost come to a loss for words when describing the allure, because, or the draw, to say that's what it is to really grab life by the balls. It's just this sort of extreme thing that in my mind, it's like, oh, I can read a book and have just the most quiet time and enjoy the smell of the coffee and just be present in the moment. And then I can also, it's like the duality of man, I guess. I can be this super relaxed, calm, meditative person. I can even meditate and have an amazing time and kind of drift away and sort things out. And then I can also experience this sort of free meditative feeling at the same time, hurtling 120 miles an hour through the air. And that's not necessarily what I experienced the first time, because I couldn't breathe for a couple seconds, just from the acceleration. But then you're falling, and I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel nervous. I was just there. And then you pull the chute, and it's, the guy said, "Welcome to my office." And it is very calming, and you're just kind of floating casually through the sky. And, like when I went parasailing the first time, I was extremely disappointed, because I was looking for a thrill, and I was maybe 15, but you're just kind of up there, and it's noisy, but there's no drops like a roller coaster. It almost feels like you're not moving. And that's kind of what it felt like to be up there. So this thing that I was expecting to be a thrill ended up being super calming as well. And I don't know. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that overall, I guess. I don't feel like risk. I feel like risk has its place in that I feel like you do need to reach to move up in life, in the sense of kind of getting out of your comfort zone so that you can adapt and you can grow. And sometimes, that can be risky, but, having a kid is risky. Getting married is risky. Not doing those things is risky. I think there's a trade-off in all things. And I feel like if you aren't playing a little bit of risk at some point, then the other risk is you go nowhere, and that's no fun. So
it's all risk versus reward.
Yes.
Reward, right? And climbing over a chain link fence with barbed wire just to run around a track.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Not worth it. As a 19-year-old, it would have been worth it, because I climbed over a fence with barbed wire.
19. It's just And I don't know why. I don't know if I'm stereotyping here or whatever, but as boys slash men, we just seem to do stupid, risky things, and I don't know why. I was the same way as a child. I was the one piling up the leaves to jump out of the tree because for the longest time I wanted to be a stuntman.
Oh my gosh, I literally had a shirt that said I do all my own stunts. And when I was in 6th grade, and I told my friends, I'm going to be a stuntman. They're like, Jake, you just had this idea in your head. I'm like, no, I'm gonna.
I would go from the roof to the tree. I would, like, there was no roof that
100%. 100%.
And
my dad was the same way too.
Unfortunately, it took me a long time to kind of come around to not doing stupid shit. And,
I hear you.
And of course, you know, I paid for it with injuries and that sort of thing. And you think, and that I would always, after the fact, go, like I would get so upset at myself. Because it's like, what were you thinking?
Oh yeah.
Where was your brain? But it was, and I don't know what it is about it. Yeah, it's the adrenaline, whatever. It's the, I don't know, this need in me to see something. It's usually a place, like I need to go there. Sometimes it's on a map. Usually it's on a map, but sometimes once you get to that place on a map, then it's like, I need to go there.
That spot over
Thankfully,
there. Yeah.
I've had a pretty good fear of heights, especially once you get over like 30 or 40 feet, and especially as I've gotten older. But, you know, climbing as high as you can in the trees until the limbs are, you know, this big and they're bending with your weight.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm high enough.
Yeah, I think we got there.
I don't know. It just now I you know, this is years ago. Well, now I'm good with my risk assessment, especially after all the years in the fire service and just seeing stuff, and risk assessment being a huge part of that job.
Sure.
You know, huge part of that job. But anyways, yeah, it's something I had to come to terms with at some point in my life. I'm glad I did it early enough and whatever that I'm still here, but I definitely had my share of close calls, and yeah, but I just don't know what it is in us. I don't know why we feel the need to, like, in my younger, I wouldn't think twice of going out right now. We're on the 2nd floor, just going out the deck right now. And
like hanging off and dropping or something like that. Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Why?
Oh,
why? Why? Like, you get to the bleachers. Well, I need to go to the top, and I need to walk along the top.
Yeah.
I need to.
You almost like need to know that you can. It's so strange. Well, when I graduated and I was doing the park ranger gig, it was honestly the perfect job for me at the time. It was almost like a way to taper off a little bit, because when I would patrol, and you know, there's like, I was like, what would I be doing if I wasn't here? Or what would I be doing if I was here off the clock? And that's what I would go. I found 2 stolen kayaks, like, you know, I'm just going to go do what I would do if I was here. And it was great because one, I was allowed to, and like there is a water tower at the side of the Autobahn. And yeah, you've been there. And we got to put up lights on the water tower for the 4th of July. And I mean, it doesn't take more than 2 weeks of knowing me, even in that job. They're like, oh, Jake, do you want to go up on the water tower? And like, yeah, sure thing. And it was just I'm just needed the excuse.
Uh-huh.
Just give me the excuse
Mm-hmm.
to go climb up this thing. And what sweetened the deal at the top was that there was a part where there's like a pole that's bent off. And so you can walk all the way around, but there's this one part you can't cross unless you want to unhook it and then hook it. I'm like, even better.
Okay.
You know, and or you know, you're hooking in and you get to look over and it's just like, oh, I'm up high.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it was nice driving along the highway and seeing the red, white, and blue lights and being like, I made my city look nice. I did enjoy that. But even like my parents gave me a pity job when I was job searching after the Ranger gig of just like painting the trim on the outside of their house and doing some caulking or whatever. And I'm like on the roof and I'm like looking down and we were in a split level. So I wasn't on the top part, but on the other part. And I'm like, in high school, I could jump off this thing. And I was like, I just got to do it to make sure. And so I just jumped off, stuck the landing. And I'm like, still got it. And I told my dad, he's like, did you really? I mean, he thought it was really pretty funny. But
why?
But why? Why do you need to know you still have it? And in my head, I'm like, well, what if I'm in a situation where I got it? Like, I'll just make up some extreme scenario. And then it's like, that's acceptable.
Yeah, it just, at some point, you know, I don't know, maybe it won't for you.
It better. Well, it has for the most part. And when I started dating Tay, this is true even in college, there was this jump on the parking garage. And it wasn't that high, but you would just jump from this little ledge on the top floor of the parking garage. And what was below you was just that floor. So we're talking maybe 9 feet up. But you could jump from that ledge to this awning roof to get to another section. And I had done it before. But after I started dating Tay, I'm like up there. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, what if I like fall and get hurt? And that'll freak her out. And then I couldn't do it. And I'm standing there and our friend Marissa's like, just do it. And I'm like, I cannot do this. And because for whatever reason, not my parents, not my sister, like thinking about them wouldn't keep me from doing dumb stuff. But when I thought about Tay, I'm like, oh, that would really impact her. And so that I feel like helped chill me out a little bit was being in that relationship. And for whatever reason, it helped me perceive that me getting hurt doesn't just impact me as well, that would make other people's lives also unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then the last close call I had with that car wreck, that's, I don't have to tell that story on here. That's too long, but that was also, it's like, all right, man, that wasn't even on purpose, obviously, but it's like, how many more of these close calls do you have in you?
Yeah.
Cause it's not in your control.
There's a selfishness in there for sure. At least for me.
Sure. Oh, 100%. There's definitely ego in there.
I'm guilty as charged. And still to a degree, you know, some of and they're not nowhere near as risky or anything, but there's a degree of selfishness when you purposely, knowingly put life and limb at risk just for your own satisfaction.
Oh, 100%.
Whether it's, do I still got it? Or just for the thrill of
Yeah.
It. And there's no, it's not benefiting anybody. And in fact, there's a really good chance it's going to hurt the people who love you. And, but even so, I did a job most of my adult life that had its share of risk.
Yeah, let's go there.
I still went and did, you know, trips on my own or whatever, and on those trips did things that completely as if I didn't have a family at all.
Sure.
But I had a wife and 2 children
Sure.
back home.
Because you're alone. You're like, oh, it's just me.
Well, but I'm not.
But it's not. But I'm sure that might have been a calculation in there.
No.
No.
Just not, and it's not when you say look around and it's just me. It's it's that selfish desire to seek out that feeling of doing whatever that risk is and getting the reward of I did it and I survived. And man, wasn't that cool?
It was.
And it's just so, I'll say it again, it's just so selfish. And I don't know, they've written books about it.
Sure.
There's been a lot of.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's like necessarily revolutionary to say that. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of guys. I knew guys that were bigger daredevils than me. Was I like, let's say in grade school, was I up there? No, maybe in the top 5% of daredevils, maybe top 1%. But there's 3 or 4 kids, you know, of however many people were in the elementary school that were next level, and I looked up to them. I was like, oh wow, how do they do that? So that was a good segue though. So you said you trained for 3 years post Air Force.
Well, yeah, roughly. So when I got out, I got a job at a media company in Beechwood, Ohio. They kind of did a little bit of everything. They had a recording studio there, which I wasn't a part of, but so I did some TV production work for them, and it was very similar to what I was doing in the Air Force. And so I did that and was pretty quickly disillusioned with the corporate world and cubicle life. And I wasn't traveling really at all, which was fine, you know, having a family, but I was just like, this, I'm going nowhere, and this is not fulfilling me intellectually. It's not fulfilling me spiritually. Like, it's not. And so my dad was a career firefighter. My grandfather was a part-time firefighter. My uncle, a career firefighter. And at that time, my cousin was a career firefighter. So firefighting was in the family. And I had made a vow many years ago, I'm never going in the force.
Get out. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like, you know, and so it just took me a while to come around to it. And
what was it that drew you in?
I felt, again, that like the selflessness that I felt serving my country in response to these people that had sacrificed their lives. I felt the need to be selfless again. And so my dad was still working at the time, and so I reached out and said, hey, can I just ride along at work with you a couple days? Like, sure. And so you know, of course they put me right on the squad, which is, you know, what is mostly what the job is squad calls. And it only took 1 call, and I was like, why didn't I do this years ago? This is like the selflessness to help people. It just overwhelmed me. It was just like it did sitting in the, you know, watching that thing.
You just get calls and then go to where they are and help them out. Like,
yeah, like
that's
people call
great.
for help and we go help them.
That's fulfilling. Yeah. So, the meaning there's immediate.
So yeah, but it was very selflessness. It was selfless. The initial draw to it, and so like, how do I do this? And so yeah, EMT, then
training
school. So EMT was a semester at community college, and then paramedic school was 9-10 months, and then firefighter school was another I think that was only about 6 months. But
So what are you doing in the meantime? Like,
I was working full time still
Okay.
at that TV production job,
Uh-huh.
and I was going to paramedic school, first EMT school and paramedic school at night. So I wasn't home at all. Like Debbie just freaking
soldiered on.
Yeah, like she was home with the
Is
girls.
Tay's born now?
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
sure. This is 99.
Oh, okay.
2000.
So she's 3.
Oh wait, I was hired in 99. So yeah, I got out in 96 and I was hired in 99.
Okay.
So,
Tay was born a year after you got out.
Yeah. Well, actually, only a few months after I got out.
Oh, okay, nice. Oh yeah, February.
December,
okay. Oh, right after. Okay, gotcha.
So, anyways, yeah, I just went to school at night and on the weekends, and then the year prior, once I had my EMT, while I was in paramedic school, I got hired part time in Menor, the actual town that I grew up in, and where my dad started, and where my grandfather and my uncle all worked. I worked part-time while going to school, while working full-time, because I wanted experience. And so I would just work nights at the fire department. So I didn't go on really any calls because it's usually quieter at night. And it wasn't a very busy station that I was at. So, but I got some experience and then finally got hired at South Euclid and did that for 22 years. And yeah.
So that's a long time. I'm sure you've reflected on it a reasonable amount.
Oh, yeah.
In your reflections, is there like a succinct phrase or thought that you have about your 20 some odd years there? Like do you paint it in a broad stroke, or is it kind of like the first 5 years, the next 5 years? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because, it's definitely broken down into just about 5-year increments where, like I said earlier, it took me about 3 years.
Right. To get comfortable and confident.
Yeah. So I was saying that 3 to 5 is,
coming of age.
Yeah.
As a firefighter.
Learning we were a busy station when I got hired, and we were even busier by the time
Right. I know how that is.
And so, I got experience very quickly, and you're spending your first 2 years primarily you're only on the rescue squad, so you're just getting really, really up to speed from a paramedic standpoint. Getting the reps in. Oh yeah. And so yeah, you finally become comfortable in that 3 to 5 year period, and you kind of I kind of got this, and then that's about the time over the next 5 years, so 5 to 10, where disillusionment
with the department,
with human
species. Sure. I can imagine that would be so frustrating. Like fixing up the same people.
Whether it's chronically ill patients that are frequent flyers that we're going on all the time, that are calling us for this stupidest stuff, or there's like people bills. Calling us for the stupidest stuff, or just frustration with the healthcare system, the abuse of it. But what keeps you going is you'll get these calls just every once in a while that keep you going, that remind you of why you're there, which is, we would call them good calls, but honestly, they're bad calls. Sure. So you would get a cardiac arrest where you shock somebody back to life.
Score.
You have somebody in severe diabetic shock, their blood glucose is like 15, and you start an IV right there, and you give them, glucose, and they perk right, they go from being completely unresponsive to
what do we got going on here?
So, or car accidents, fires, just those things that they weren't every shift, but they were just enough, and that reminded you of why you were doing it. But I went through it in that 5 to 10 year period where you just you don't want to go into work anymore. You're tired of it. You get grumpy, not only with your fellow firefighters, because you're starting to get sick of working with them.
Yeah.
But they're grumpy too at times, and because they're trying to work themselves through it. If they are, something a lot of guys didn't, and they never came out of it,
and they're just like stuck in it. That sucks.
They're grumpy the rest of their career.
That's terrible.
So that was that, and then so you hopefully work your way out of that to then you get to a point where now you're the senior guy. You have seniority, you have experience, and now you're mentoring. Now you've entered this time of, so the next 5 years is you're learning how to be a mentor.
10 to 15 to the new guys. Yeah.
To the new guys. And you're
facilitating culture again. Facilitating culture again, similar to the Air Force when you had to, take command there. Like, was there any culture building you had to do with those new guys?
No, it's more they're gonna get it.
Gotcha.
And by then, quite honestly, I was one of the last. I might have been the last green guy that they hired. Most guys, if not all the guys hired after me, already came in with experience. Either they were full-time somewhere else.
You got the legacy.
Or part-time, working full-time hours.
Sure.
So, for me, coming right out of paramedic school with virtually no experience, I think I was probably the last guy, because many years before me, they actually would hire guys with no experience and send them through paramedic school while they're
on the job.
Yeah. So
different time.
Yeah. But yeah, so that 10 to 15 is you're learning how to be a mentor, and you're trying to, you've now, I'll call it a style that people know how you are on calls. And you have a reputation that you've built. Whether it's,
you know what you're going to get when you go with Chris.
Yeah, you know what you're going to get when you go with Joe. You know what you're going to get when you go with this guy. This guy, and you've developed a way to cope with whatever call comes in, whatever that may be. You've developed a way to cope with walking into just chaos is going on around you. And you just got to step through it as if it's not there, and just fight off everything telling you, like, half your brain's going like, holy shit. And the other half is like, all right, what's going on here?
Like, what's the order of operations? Is the scene safe?
All that stuff. Yeah, you're just, but it's you're not thinking that though. You don't think it anymore. It's
autopilot.
It's just there. Like,
that's cool.
You don't even have to. And a lot of times you're already painting a picture on the way, right? With whatever information comes over from dispatch,
right?
Either in the initial tone, the call that comes through in the station, let alone any other information that you're getting in the vehicle once you leave the station before you arrive. So you're trying to paint a picture, but I would say at least half, if the calls were kind of BS, that weren't. In fact, in my later years, we adopted a policy of transporting non-emergent. When I started, it didn't matter what the call was. If we were going to the hospital, it was emergent. Lights and siren. My last, let's say, 6 years-ish or so.
And you did how many, just to be?
22.
22, so okay,
So that last 6 to 8 years, I guess.
The final phase.
We were really good at adopting, if this is non-emergent, like, we didn't even start an IV. All we did was a blood pressure. Then we're just going non-emergent to the hospital. We're just driving with traffic.
Gotcha.
And because there's no sense in risking us and
Sure.
the general public and getting in an accident or anything just
Uh-huh.
for somebody who has a headache.
Gotcha.
You know,
That kind of stuff. Yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah. So, and then you get that last 5, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
And you're just trying to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to make it fun. You're trying to leave maybe so that when guys like leave, so your legacy is that he was a good guy to work with, and you left happy, and he was
sure,
whatever. But also you're still mentoring, but you're just kind of you start to see the light at the end. So that's how I would break it up.
Okay, gotcha.
So definitely like an arc to it.
Yeah, and so overall, would you rate it a generally positive experience then? All things considered?
Yes. Just like the military, anytime I find out somebody's going in or thinking about going in, I'm like, do it. Like, go. You need it. Like I think everybody should have that kind of experience where you're, the basic training part of it, especially where everybody's torn down. You're just torn down, and you're just forced to comply with these set of rules, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts.
There's no deviation.
Then you and everyone there's no exceptions. There's no, there's
the standard is the standard.
And it's there. And then through adversity that they give you, and through these things that you're forced to push through your comfort zones, everything, then you're slowly built up. And then there's your self-confidence, your confidence in what you're doing, all these things. And then, so there's, it's such a confidence booster. I
sure.
So high. And then, especially for young people who don't know what they want to do, it's a great way to do something that's selfless, serving your country. You might learn something. You're definitely going to learn something about yourself.
Yep.
You're going to have the time now to maybe figure out what you want to do. And at least at that time, my GI Bill that I got from being in paid for my paramedic and firefighter school.
Oh, huge.
I know that's gone, like their incentives now for college education it's gone through the roof.
Recruiting has been tough recently.
There's just so many pluses to it. And I can't recommend it enough. And same with the fire service, to have, and going back to the military, to come right out of high school or college and have full benefits, housing, just all that stuff just taken care of.
Yeah.
And if you want to make a career out of it, you start, let's say you get out of high school and you put in, I think now you can retire at 15 years, but back when I was in, it was 20. Well, you start at 18 and you can retire at 38 and go on to another career. That's what my buddy Dave. He went through Army ROTC, so
okay.
But he did a full career in the Army, and then he went and worked for the government, and he's getting ready to retire now. He'll have 2 pensions. But anyways, and then the fire service, kind of the same thing. It's selfless. The work schedule you can't beat, the 24 on 48 off.
Yeah.
And it's a grind, especially if you're on a busy department. There's departments out there that you can make good money and it's not real busy, and you can have a relatively kind of easy career. But there's some departments you're going to get your ass run into the ground within the first 2 years. And there's quite a few departments out there where the money's actually not that good. But if you get on the right department, you can make good money. It's selfless. and it's a rewarding job, and you you can retire relatively early and
Definitely.
have a good pension and all that stuff. So yeah, but the main thing is, I went into the Air Force really green, and then I learned stuff, and then I went to the fire service. I was so green about just the world, just humanity, and all the bad and the good, I guess, of humanity. But I just learned so much from, people would call us to, fix their toilet or
get out.
no,
Wow.
the water, they can't shut the water off.
They call 911?
Oh yeah. They can't.
I love it.
I just learned so much just from, like, you learn about houses and utilities and shutting off gas. They would do that all the time, where they would have a gas leak, in their stove or somewhere, and you just have to go shut the gas off to the house, and then you call the gas company, and they'll come out and do whatever they're going to do. But or electricity, those are probably one of the most frustrating calls. Is you get a call for an odor of smoke, and you'd show up and you could smell it too.
Yeah.
And you could barely see it, and you're like, where's this coming from? And so you're trying to, you're crawling in their attic. You got to find out where their attic space is. It's probably in a closet or something, or a hall. You got to go up in there. You just going all over these people's house, and then in 20 minutes it's gone.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, okay, what did we just do? Did it come? Where was it coming from? Is there a risk that when we leave,
it's gonna come back
an hour, their house is gonna be on fire? Yeah. So and so you'd be shutting off, circuit breakers and just doing all that stuff. But yeah, it just it would become in that, like I said, 5 to 10 year point. It was very frustrating because why are these people calling for this? Oh my God, these people are so stupid, And then to get myself out of that, you're like, no, we help the helpless.
Sure.
To whatever degree that is.
Yeah, that's the job.
That's the job, is we help the helpless. And if they're so helpless that they don't know that the shutoff for their sink is under the sink,
right?
That's fine. If, whatever it is, it, we got a call for a lady she called that her legs were on fire.
Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so we go and we sent the squad and the engine, thinking that
there's a fire.
There could be a fire.
Yeah, she's crisp right now.
And here she used Icy Hot for the first time on her legs.
Oh, my legs are on fire! Wow.
Yeah.
So she was in the cool part when you got there.
Yeah. So she didn't know that. I guess back in the day, it was Ben Gay way before Icy Hot. I guess she'd never even used. I don't know, but yeah. So you just get
What? So by the end of the job, would you say faith in humanity restored? No.
I still don't.
Still don't. Still no faith.
No, absolutely not.
Bummer.
Yeah.
What was the transition like for retirement? Because now I'm now in the picture. Not so, but so I kind of know, but I don't really know all the way. Because you guys had the plan. You want to talk about your plan? What did you do? What did you do to the van?
Yeah, so I came upon van lifers, like I'm sure a lot of people have on YouTube over the years, and that sounded like a really good idea in retirement. So retired in 2021 in the spring. So in the summer of 2020, we bought a Ford Transit and we built it out ourselves. And with the goal of not traveling full time, but my goal is at least 6 months out of the year is to be somewhere in the van. So um, the first 2 years we were able to do that. Not 6 months consecutively, but
sure.
The first year we went out for 4 months consecutively, and then did a few smaller trips, and then kind of a little more broken up the second year, but it totaled about 6 months. So that's. And as far as what was it like to retire? It was initially sort of like, I can't believe I'm here already.
What was the adjustment like?
It wasn't hard because with our schedule, having that 24 on 48 off, we actually get some people call it a Kelly day, we call it a free day, but 1 day a month, you have 1 day a month off. So 1 day a month, you have 5 days off in a row. And then that doesn't even count for vacation time. So if you combine vacation time, like
you'd spend some time off.
I'd have 2 or 3 weeks off or whatever. So I was used to being away from work. In fact, the longest I'd been away was 2010. We took the girls out to California and back, and we were gone almost 6 weeks. I took 6 weeks off of work. So, so it wasn't hard. I was so looking forward to it. It was I didn't realize what a lack of sleep was doing to me. I didn't realize I had gone through, so my breaking point, like going back, and I think, and this is my theory, but I think pretty much, and it depends obviously on which department you're on and what kind of calls you're going on mostly, but I don't care. Any paramedic, any firefighter, EMT, whether you're in the fire service or you work for, like EMS, whatever it is, you have PTSD. I'm sorry, you have it. You can argue with me, but you have it. And one of the main symptoms of it is just that, like, F the world.
Sure.
And being grumpy and being irritable and all that stuff. And so I think that's what was going on when you got to either get through or over that hump of that 5 to 10 year period. I think PTSD is starting to settle in.
Sure.
And I equate it. Yeah, you could have some really shitty calls. Like you could have one really shitty call that just does it to you.
Yeah,
or,
devastating.
In my experience, and my theory is just like with brain trauma with the football players,
TBIs.
Yeah, you can have 1 or 2 really bad concussions, and that can cause it. But more likely, especially with linemen and stuff, it's just those micro hits. And I don't care, but even the calls that after a while you consider
not too
I
crazy.
I won't say bullshit, but they're just not that stressful. But they're still, for anybody else, the normal person on the street would be, oh my gosh. And we were like, whatever. Those add up. And they did for me. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was the school shooting at Chardon.
Right.
That was the one that just, like, boom. Like it just broke. But it took me, and it wasn't immediate. And it wasn't like the PTSD symptoms were there, but for me to realize it,
to catch on to what was going on,
it took about a year.
That's fair.
And then I went to therapy. And then
I didn't know that.
It was like, and then started researching it. It's like, oh my gosh. And then, So, but why that's related to me retiring is I didn't realize how much I was carrying still. I talk about lack of sleep and then the change in me of getting a nice, good sleep every single day of the week.
That'll help the brain heal a little bit.
But then not having that weight of either going into work and knowing that, I'm not going to say we're Supermen, but wearing that Superman costume.
Sure.
And you have no idea. You have no idea what the day is going to be. It could be a 20-call day. It could be a 2-call day. It could be like you're going to see the worst fire of your life today. You could see the worst car accident of your life today. You could have the worst full arrest of your career today. Or it could be just the quietest day.
Yeah, you don't know what you're walking into, that's for sure.
And so the weight of that, or getting off shift and taking what you saw, like I told Michaela this story recently, and she's like, I can't believe. And it's the juxtaposition. So when the girls were little and I would come home, like there was one call where it was difficulty breathing, and it was only me and another guy. It was a backup squad call, and it was right before we were getting off shift. It was like 7:30 in the morning. We get off at 8. So you're like this close, like we were this close not to have to go on the call. And so we were tired from the day before and all that, and we get there and the guy's in his back bedroom, and we walk in and he's having difficulty breathing, but he's still talking. So we put him on oxygen, and it was just me and the other guy, and he's a bigger guy, so we weren't going to carry him out or anything. So we walked him out to the cot out just outside of his house, and then we wheeled him out to the squad. And by the time we get out there, he's now even worse. And long story short, and his wife was like, gave him a hug and a kiss, like, I'll see you at the hospital. And, we're like, yeah, okay. And long story short, by the time we got to the hospital, he was unresponsive and he died.
Wow.
Right there in the emergency room. Like, we helped work the full arrest with the ER staff.
Oh, gotcha.
Because it was, they didn't know. We didn't know. Like, he just went boom, like right a minute before we're pulling in. We'd already called the hospital and told them, yeah, we're just coming in with a difficulty breathing. So they weren't expecting a full arrest. Because when you have a full arrest, you call them and you're telling them. And so usually when you show up, there's a whole team of people waiting,
ready to respond.
And so there was so we're doing CPR and the whole bit right in the emergency room, and he passed away. And so we clean up the squad and go back and I go home. So I went from, pumping on this guy's chest in the emergency room that just said goodbye to his wife.
Sure.
And he was only 50 something. So he wasn't an older guy either. And now I'm playing with the kids.
Honey, I'm home. Yeah.
No, I'm playing with the kids. And that.
Yeah, that's a whiplash.
And to do that, too many times to count. That adds up.
Yeah, that does add up.
And so to not have that anymore, like to bring that home, that weight. When people talk about bringing the work home, I've never had to do that, like physical work, like work on my laptop or work paperwork or do stuff. But I still brought work home in a sense. But
definitely. Internally. Sure.
And so my job was to shield the family from that.
Yeah. Totally.
And then so it was just this weird thing, and you had to learn how to do that. Nobody teaches you how to do that. Nobody tells you.
And everyone's different, so they're going to react to it differently.
Some guys took alcohol.
Sure. Oh, I believe it.
Some guys took it out on their family. Some guys, their wives. I don't hate divorces. Guys went through over my time. And I knew, I didn't know early on, but I knew later on that quite a bit of that was probably chalked up to the job.
Mm-hmm.
That they just didn't
Didn't know
know
how
how
to
to deal
handle
with
it.
it.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that they have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they weren't doing anything. Nobody was
They weren't treating it.
intervening.
Sure.
And it's because it's the way we dealt with it is humor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's the locker room humor.
Mm-hmm.
It's humor at inappropriate times.
Uh-huh.
Inappropriate humor for sure, but it was just between us, and but that's how we dealt with it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so retiring, I could walk away from all of that and kind of have my life back and do what I wanted to do, or what we wanted to do, and we traveled, and it was great, and it's still going on. Although now we're grandparents, and
yeah, that's a big change. Sorry to interrupt your retirement.
So this will be, we're coming up on 4 years. Things kind of go in 5-year cycles, maybe. I guess I don't know, but yeah. So now we have this beautiful granddaughter, thanks to you and Taylor, and it's just another chapter.
Well, I was thinking, actually, the reason I asked like way back at the beginning about like whether or not being a dad made you like more poetic or see the smaller things in life is right before I came over, she was eating blueberries, and she was just in her, high chair, and I didn't know how much she liked them until today. And I was looking at her eyes, and they got that bright blue. And in my head, I just started playing around with blueberries and blue eyes. Like, oh, is there something there? Like, and I don't know, I don't know what that something was. Like, I was like, oh, it's just. I just like was trying to figure out how to capture the moment with blueberries and blue eyes, and this adorable little baby that is cuter than she has any right to be, just munching on these lovely little blueberries. And I don't know, it's just I don't know what's gonna happen next in terms of that sort of journey. But what I did want to ask you, and we can wrap it up here, but you have had all these experiences,
we didn't even talk about surfing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Oh my God, that's so true. That's hilarious. That is. It really is. But whether it's music or poetry, surfing, that is so funny that never came up.
No, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not 18 years old.
You're definitely the oldest guest.
So I've had, like you said, I've had these chapters in my life where I just didn't do one thing, and not to float my own boat or anything, but I think it just speaks to my curiosity, and what still fuels me today is my curiosity. I'm still curious. I want to know what's over there. I want to know why that is. I'm just curious, and it hasn't stopped, and I hope that doesn't stop until I take my last breath.
Right? Sure. I agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and so I think that's why I wouldn't say I've lived this, complete, this, life of a movie, or a movie life. Like,
yeah.
But it was.
Well, you can see the grand narrative now upon some reflection too.
It's just, I don't know. I just followed my curiosity, I guess.
That's good. If you could list, we'll say 3 to 5 strengths or gifts of yourself, what would they be?
Say curiosity. sensitivity,
Mm.
which I don't know if you can combine that with empathy, but
Yeah, because I feel like you can be sensitive to situations, but then also empathize. Like sensitivity maybe being acute awareness, and then empathy being the feeling of
emotional. I mean, you can almost wrap it up in emotional intelligence.
Okay. Yeah.
I think again, you're asking me to not be humble here.
Yeah. No, I want you to.
But just, and I think that helped me a lot on the job. I think even though I was really in the fire service as a paramedic, those first few years were really rough. It took me every shift I was so nervous. I was nervous to make a mistake. I was nervous because I didn't know what I was doing. And then, but what I could fall back on was my emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind holding a hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that person seems like they need right now.
Sure.
And I could fall back on that, that sensitivity, I guess, to what, like I didn't, so what if I missed the IV? So what if, you know, okay, but I
you were there for him.
Yeah. And so I could always fall back on that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
curiosity, emotional intelligence. Yeah. You've got two, at least one more.
Adaptability.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know. No, love's got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I just feel
you're a loving guy.
I don't know. I came from a very loving family for the most part. And I don't know. I just think that's got to be the thread.
Sure.
I don't know.
Nice. So you've got whatever this new chapter is, and you talked about how you're like there's this willingness to serve, for the Air Force, and then again for the
citizens of South Ukiah.
Yes, the citizens of South Ukiah owe you their gratitude. But how, and this is not something you have to answer, right now, but you just listed 4 strengths, love, adaptability, emotional intelligence, and curiosity. You've definitely been of service to, me and Tay. Throughout our relationship, especially the past year. That's obvious. But how, and again, this is not something you really have to answer, but how are you going to apply that selflessness and service with those 4 strengths going forward? And maybe that's just something you can think about. But those are things.
No, I think it's, as I get into the last third of my life here, hopefully, the curiosity is what keeps me going. It gets me out of bed, especially now having no job.
Sure.
Right? And there's got to be a void that gets filled. Okay. Well, that's my curiosity about the world around me, about trying new things, or taking things that I'm doing, whether it's music and whatever, and being more curious within that, right? Adapting to, right now we don't have a house.
Right.
So we're constantly adapting to living in a place like this for a month, and then going back down to South Carolina for a couple months, then coming. So there's a constant being adaptable to just I don't know. And then the emotional intelligence, I think, comes into play because we're just so being in a family, I don't live alone. I have a wife, and and have a long marriage. And I think that's been one of the keys to having a long marriage is having the intelligence to realize that not every day is a good day when you're with somebody, but also being there for my kids when they need me, and then leading off with love. When it comes down to it, I might not want to do some things or whatever, but just I'll do it because I love my family. I'm doing it. It comes from a place of love, and hopefully, the selfishness can kind of stay away, not become too selfish, because it does rear its ugly head once in a while. My selfishness.
Oh well, that's everyone.
And we all need time to ourselves, or time to do things we want to do. That's fine, but sometimes I can still be a little selfish.
Yeah, we all can. Well, thanks for doing this show.
Yeah, happy to be the 20th.
Yeah, thanks for being 20th. Thank you.
Hope I didn't sniffle too much.
No. Oh my gosh.
A drinking game you can play. People can play while they watch this or listen to it, whatever. But
yeah.
And if we have a part 2, I'd love to talk about surfing and
definitely
some of maybe adventures I've had on the bike, or just the adventures. We didn't talk about
100%. Yeah, we'll definitely have to go the adventure side, because that's what I did with Mick, more or less both times, but definitely the first one. So we'll have to do that. But thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your service to our country, to South of Euclid, to my family, and I look forward to seeing how you'll be in service in the future. So. Later.